Canada is receiving more visitors from Europe and Asia than ever, but fewer Canadians are coming into the United States, and that's been the case for more than half a year. Why is this trend occurring? What does it portend for the future of travel? It's not a random blip on the radar. This is a trend that has been quietly gathering steam in the background while everybody else was distracted. Foreign travelers, particularly from nations such as the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, are flying into Canada in increasing quantities. Air arrivals now account for more than 76% of foreign entries. These are not die-hard weekenders, however. They're visiting for culture, schooling, and longer periods of leisure. And they're visiting longer, spending more, and creating an economic ripple effect that's propelling entire regions such as Ontario and British Columbia. Meanwhile, travel between the United States and Canada is slowing rapidly. Canadian travel to the United States has declined considerably, particularly by car. Indeed, automobile journeys from Canada into the US are down by more than 32%. That's not a dip, that's a behavioral change. Not as many families are loading up the car and driving off to Buffalo or Seattle. And it's not because they've lost enthusiasm for travel, it's because their priorities have shifted. This isn't about a border shutdown or new legislation, it's about momentum. Patterns of travel are like water, they take the path of least resistance. And presently, that direction is away from the US and toward foreign destinations that seem newer, more vibrant, or just better suited for what contemporary travelers crave. For Canadians, growing expenses of travel, particularly with inflation continuing to bear down on necessities such as gas and accommodation, make cross-border road trips less appealing. If they're going to blow the money, they'd prefer to go somewhere farther away, more memorable, and let's be honest, more Instagrammable. Meanwhile, American visitors aren't exactly pouring north either. Sure, there's a 7% increase in cruise arrivals from the US, but that's the extent of it. Car travel is down, short trips are down, and even air arrivals have dropped marginally. Americans appear to be heading elsewhere, maybe to Europe, South America, or the Caribbean for their post-pandemic vacations. And while they're shifting, Canada is also shifting, but in the opposite direction. The statistics make this trend perfectly clear. Canada's international tourism is up 2% year over year. That's a robust, sustained increase, particularly given how unpredictable the global travel sector has been since the pandemic years of 2020 and 2021. It's not a rebound, it's a new path. What's behind this change? Accessibility is a major one. Canada has moved aggressively to open more direct routes of international flights, making it simpler than ever for travelers from Europe and Asia to get to cities such as Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. No complicated connections, no 3-flight horrors, just a straight flight to a nation that serves up both untamed natural splendor and urbane city sophistication. Sure, there's a 7% increase in cruise arrivals, but it's more than logistics. Canada has, wittingly or not, positioned itself as a welcoming nation. Its reputation is that of openness, safety, and possibility. Canada is an easier choice for many foreign visitors, particularly those whose own countries have complicated visa procedures elsewhere in the world. And when visitors do come, they don't necessarily want to leave. That's where the long-term effect starts to form. Tourism not only generates revenue from hotels, restaurants, and tours. It also builds a pipeline of individuals who might become students, employees, and citizens one day. When a person travels to a nation and has an excellent time, that nation ends up on their mental shortlist, not only for vacations, but for life choices. That is what is currently occurring in Canada. Foreign students are an increasingly valuable part of that equation. Lots of the same individuals coming in as tourists are coming back as students, and after they're here, they seek out work or permanent residence. It's a population gain camouflaged in a tourism figure, and for a nation actively looking to increase its pool of skilled workers, it's an economic boon waiting to be seen. Meanwhile, Canadian tourism industries are beginning to shift. Rather than pursuing short-term, low-value tourist dollars, they're targeting long-stay, high-value experiences. Consider guided nature excursions, upscale lodge accommodations, learning-oriented excursions, and cultural immersion. These are the kinds of products that bring international visitors and encourage them to return. Compare that with what's occurring south of the border. The United States, though perhaps the most visited nation on Earth, is losing ground to Canadian travellers. It's not all about price, it's about experience too. To many Canadians, travelling to the US is no longer an escape. It seems routine, even ordinary, now that destinations like Portugal, Japan, and Costa Rica are just an airplane ride away. And then there's added to this trust and perception. After political division, increased gun violence, and complicated border protocols, some Canadians are simply choosing to skip it. They don't feel as welcome or as secure travelling to the United States as they used to. Not that they're boycotting America, but rather they're doing some thinking twice. And once people begin thinking twice about travelling, behaviour changes rapidly. This is not about rivalry or nationalism. This is about momentum, perception, and opportunity. And currently, Canada is gaining ground, not only in tourist statistics, but in cultural capital. Each overseas visitor arriving at Pearson or YVR is another point on a much larger chart. A chart of how nations ascend and descend in the collective imagination. A chart of how tourism today will inform immigration, education, and investment tomorrow. So if you're in the tourism business, a policymaker, or simply someone who wants to know where the world is going, then this trend is important because it's more than merely where the people are headed on holiday. It's where the nations are emerging as magnets for international focus and where they're gradually falling from sight like this. Subscribe for additional global insights in less than 10 minutes. For Canada, the potential is not just to sustain this momentum, it's to grow it. If provinces such as Ontario and British Columbia can develop infrastructure and amenities customized to long-haul visitors, they might be fixtures on the international travel map permanently. That translates to more multilingual signage, improved public transit links, and immigration-friendly policies that translate short-term visits into long-term value. It also involves creating smaller destinations, locations beyond the large cities that provide something real, local, and unique. The most viable tourism economies are not only the ones that are able to get people to come, they're the ones that make people want to. It takes trust, accessibility, and a sense of belonging, even for someone who's only staying a week. Right now, Canada has a window to do something few countries have pulled off. Turn a tourism spike into a sustained global presence. This could also be a turning point in how Canada defines its national identity on the world stage. For years, it's been viewed as America's quiet neighbour, gracious, courteous, and easy to miss. But in the eyes of many travellers today, Canada is no longer a side trip. It's the main event. And that has long-term implications far beyond travel. Cultural exposure leads to cultural investment. Tourists come, they tell their friends, they post their photos, and suddenly cities like Vancouver and Montreal are not just destinations, they're brands. This kind of visibility builds over time, but when it takes root, it can completely reshape how a country is perceived globally. Consider the way Iceland, Portugal, or South Korea revitalize their reputations through tourism. Canada is in that same situation today. The question is, will it take advantage of it? One of the greatest obstacles facing Canada is not visibility, but preparedness. If infrastructure cannot keep up with increasing demand, travellers will notice, and they'll go elsewhere. That translates to greater pressure on airports, accommodations, local venues, and even immigration services. When the system is slowed, the experience is compromised, and in tourism, experience is paramount. This is particularly the case as travellers become increasingly value-conscious. With years of pandemic-related disruption behind them, humans aren't simply travelling more, they're travelling smarter. They're researching more, reading more reviews, and making choices based on the extent to which a place lines up with their personal values: safety, sustainability, inclusivity. These aren't marginal issues anymore. They are at the heart of how individuals determine where to go. And this is where Canada has an advantage as well. It has already a good reputation for being safe, progressive, and green. That's ahead of the game. But it creates high expectations as well. Visitors who travel in anticipation of a certain level will depart discontented if that level is not achieved. Therefore, the challenge to Canadian tourism isn't merely to expand, but to expand with integrity. Conversely, the weakening influence of US tourism offers a whole different type of opportunity, one for introspection. Not that the US has fallen out of favor, it's just that the world is evolving at a faster pace than it is upgrading. Travel expenses are higher, border strategies are incoherent, and the attention game worldwide is more intense than ever. If the US is to regain its status as a #1 destination, particularly for Canadians, it must reimagine what it's providing and how it's marketing it. Those days when name recognition alone would suffice are over. Nowadays, connection is what matters, and that connection must be gained, not taken for granted. That requires deeper cross-border experiences, more coherent messaging, and a clearer picture of what contemporary travelers actually want. Simply being large is no longer enough. You need to be relevant. This is travel's moment about something greater than geography. It's about perception, positioning, and presence. The nations that grasp this will flourish. Nations that disregard it will wither. And so Canada stands at a crossroads, one lined not only with airplane tickets and passport stamps, but with possibility. Will it double down on what works? Will it be enhancing the visitor experience and making an investment in long-term cultural capital? Or will it play this tourism surge as a seasonal trend and overlook the larger context? If recent statistics are any portent, the interest is there. The question now is if the systems, strategies, and stories are robust enough to hold it together. But here's what's already certain. The future of international travel isn't just about where people can go, it's about where they want to be. And currently, more and more are heading to Canada. If you'd like to see where the world is going, look where the tourists travel. Like, subscribe, and come back here for the next turn as we reshape our future world.